What's up, Pat?
What up? Here we
Hey,
are.
man.
We
I'm
made
so
it.
glad yeah, man. I'm so glad you're taking the time out to hang out for a little bit. So you're coming to us from your home studio?
Yeah, well, yeah, I got a little writing, a little music room in my house. And don't be fooled. This is where I quit every other day. I sit
Yeah,
down at the piano,
yeah.
things don't go as planned, and then
You're like,
I'm
yeah, I'm not doing this anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man. So do you go in there every day, Pat?
Yeah, I do I'm not necessarily it's not necessarily always 4 hours at a piano, but I try every single day to sit down and just
Yeah,
do something, whether
yeah,
it's comb through some notes maybe from previous
yeah,
days, or just sit down and play a melody and
yeah,
sing to God what's been happening that day. It's been on my mind and my
yeah,
heart, and it's funny, like songwriting started to really change for me when I realized that songwriting wasn't just my time at a piano or sitting with a guitar with a pen and paper
yeah,
out. I just started like paying attention to my day, to my life, whatever was going on. And so all throughout the day, if something like catches my ear or my heart, or if I have just a thought, I'm writing constantly down in the notes of my phone. So
yeah.
um, yeah, so even that, like even if it's not like in this room, that is a practice of mine to like, hey, if I'm going through the day
Yeah,
and I feel something, or for some reason something sticks out to me, I just make sure I
yeah,
write it down and think about it. And that, when I started including that and counting that as part of songwriting, just like being awake and aware to the things that are
yeah.
stirring me throughout the day, and things I'm thinking about, um, it took the pressure off. Just like, okay, I'm here for an hour at a piano. You're kind of
Hmm.
just going through the day like
Yeah,
open and
yeah.
awake, and you
I
end up
love
talking
that.
to God a lot, which is cool.
So you obviously write with people, like you do co-writes. Do you
Yeah.
often write alone?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'll, as much as I love writing with people, like I do think it is important to sit down and make sure, I'm if there's an idea that I'm sitting with,
Yeah,
you know, I love to as a practice trying to like flesh
yeah,
that idea out.
yeah,
But I mean, there's just no replacing the magic of being in a room with people that
yeah,
you love and respect, and you don't just get like your best idea, you get like our best idea.
yeah.
And
Collective best idea.
yeah, totally. And then regardless of whether that song gets used for a project or anything, like
Yeah,
there's there's a communal experience in that is just, I don't know, it just feels really important, and
yeah,
it forces vulnerability in front of other people as well, which
hmm,
is, I think, a really great thing for a leader to
yeah, yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I know. I've done co-writing before, and there is nothing like it. But there is something too. I do like writing alone because, or at least to start, because then you really can just like do like a complete heart dump. It feels like with no any sort of weird pressure at all, and then
Yeah,
bringing that idea to a group of people and being like, all right, make this like better. But then you have
yeah,
to really
yeah,
just release it though. You have to like give it up. Like here's this baby, I birthed, and now you guys just
yeah.
tear it apart.
You raise it.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
right. Yeah, you raise it. So I see that piano behind you. Are you classically trained on a piano? Like, is that
Oh,
an instrument that you
heck
were trained
no.
on playing?
No way. I'm the worst piano player you've ever heard. But
Yeah.
a few years
Does it
ago,
transpose? Is there a transpose button on it?
I wish I'd pay. They could name their price if they could transpose this. Actually,
Yeah.
I started teaching myself like, I don't know, 7 years ago or something, with like post-it notes,
Yeah.
like Nashville number system style. So I started in C. I can play C, G, D, A. You
Yep.
know,
Just
but what I
chords.
like about it, because I'm not proficient at it, it does force me into like, um,
Yeah.
there's a simplicity to it.
Yeah.
And sometimes y'all sit to play guitar, you end up playing the same voicing the same way, and just kind
Yeah.
of will just kind of jar you out of the out of your normal
Hmm.
some of those like ruts and
Yeah,
reflexes sometimes we have when we sit down to write and play music. So
totally.
that's why I like
Man,
it. It just gets me out of my norm.
I am the exact same way. I usually play guitar, but when I songwrite, I almost always songwrite from a piano because it just
Yeah.
like, and I'm not a piano player. I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't read sheet music at all, but I
Oh,
can do chords and stuff. And it forces you to like, you just come up with new melodies and things you wouldn't do just, on
yeah,
the guitar, playing the same chords you always play.
yeah.
So,
I agree.
well, anyways, I was not planning on asking those questions, but so, all right, Pat, give us a little bit of a glimpse of like how you started leading worship. Was it in middle school, like every other worship leader out there?
Is that what it is? Middle school, everyone says it.
I feel
Like,
like every person I ask, how did you start leading worship? They say, oh yeah, in my church youth group.
well, there it is. Actually, yeah.
Awesome. That's
Well,
all right. I
okay.
just I just shared your whole story for you. No.
Well, at my dad's church growing up, so I grew up in a really small, non-denominational church, and I was terrified of my own voice until I was in ninth grade. I was a freshman in high school, and um, never really like I played in garage bands and stuff, but like singing into a mic full volume,
Yeah.
I was terrified of that. And so my friend went to just like a bigger church with a lot more kids in their youth group, and they had a youth praise band, and I was asked to
Yeah.
play drums for it. You do not want me playing drums for anything you got, trust me. But I started playing drums in this in as a ninth grader in this youth praise
That's
band
awesome.
at a different church, and yeah, I think there's always a I always loved music. Growing up in church, the most live music I ever heard was in a sanctuary with people singing
Yeah.
something they really believed. And I know that that experience, I don't think I still fully know how much it was shaping for me, but um, around my sophomore year of high school or something like that, I had, even though I grew up in church, I had my own encounter with God and for the first time decided for myself, like, okay, I'm gonna be
Yeah.
a follower of Jesus, and I'm not living off my parents' faith. I'm making a decision for myself, and
Yeah.
it was after I read I
Yeah.
read the Message, the Eugene paraphrase of the Bible, Eugene Peterson, and it was like for the
Hmm.
first time I heard it was like in Acts. I say this sometimes because I don't know of another way to explain it. It's like in Acts when they came out of the room speaking in tongues. People around them
Yeah.
said, "We're hearing the wonders of God in our own language,"
Yeah.
and that's what it felt like for me. I was like, okay, as a high schooler, all of a sudden I'm reading words that I've heard my whole life, but they were finally in my own language, and my just felt like my eyes were opened and my heart opened up, and we started leading worship at our high school FCA. That
Yeah.
was just like a place we could serve in our school, and um,
Yeah.
played at Crew and at the University of Georgia when I went to college, and just
Yeah.
started writing. That was really probably in high school, early on in high school when we started writing songs and which was just opening to Psalms and just singing those, right?
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
that was kind of the beginnings for me of leading worship, and
Yeah.
um, I feel like I've been doing the same thing now at
Yeah.
it's 39
Yeah.
that I started when I was 16.
There's something. I'm a PK too, pastor's kid from
I could
my
tell.
dad
I could
was.
tell. You look like you got a little attitude problem.
Totally, man. Totally. So I grew up in the Vineyard Church movement. My dad was a pastor, and I just like you, man. I just remember, being a 4-year-old hanging out, laying underneath the church chairs, listening to worship music constantly, like my
Yeah.
whole life. And it's amazing how deeply ingrained it is into you. Um, and And the it's amazing to me the number of worship pastors that were PKs. It's
Yeah.
just something. It's like a language. It's
Yeah.
uh it's like a spirit song that's so like deeply ingrained in us, that I don't know. I just think it's special. I always like asking that question, and it's interesting though because the answers are often very, very similar. And what was there someone that really inspired you? Like, what was a worship leader that you looked up to a lot in that season? Like when you look back to like your high school days, when you were leading
Oh,
worship at FCA, like,
easy. Chris Tomlin. Easy.
yeah,
He well, and also I grew up in Atlanta, so
yeah,
the
yeah,
whole, I mean, the passion movement. When I was thinking back to just specifically high school,
yeah,
that would have been I graduated high school 2003. What is that? 99, 2000. Like that was
yeah.
we. Anytime those albums came out, this Passion Records or one
They
of
were
the,
huge.
oh, it was the soundtrack
Yeah,
to my communion with God,
yeah, yeah,
and obviously so many others as well. Like
yeah.
I, but yeah, there's
I
always.
remember that.
Oh, I remember the albums. I remember what I felt like the days those
Yeah.
came out. How much I looked forward to them, just because it was like, okay, I've
Hmm.
never heard anything like this before,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
and it's
There
so
was
so
nothing like it.
influential to my life even now.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And isn't it? I bet it's got to be kind of surreal to then now be the person releasing that music. Because the music you're releasing is the soundtrack for some other PK, or not just
right,
PKs, but like just
right,
anybody.
right.
But like
Yeah,
there's some other pastor's kid, man, who's like 16 years old leading worship with their church youth group, and now they're like, oh, Pat Barrett, like his new album, Shelter, or just still jamming, the way. I think that's got to be
that's
a
wild.
surreal feeling.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about it that much, to be honest, but I've had a couple people come up to me and just be like, "Oh man, it's so awesome, dude! I grew up on you." I'm like, "Wait, wait, wait!
Yeah.
How old are you? You grew up? Like, wait,
Yeah.
what?"
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
but I know that feeling when like there's
Hmm.
some stage of your life that was really
Yeah.
important where you felt like, maybe the path split and you made a choice.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
always like songs and music that instantly take you like right back to
Yeah.
that moment,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know?
I know. Well, so speaking of those songs, what's a song in general? It doesn't have to be as one that you wrote. It could be one you wrote. That's fine. Or just any song right now that's like really stirring and moving you. And I'll start by just saying that like there's a song right now that's so old, but it reminds me back of my old vineyard days. I don't know if you remember this, Pat. It's the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His
New every
mercies.
morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
Oh,
just
I
so
love that
sweet
song.
and simple. That song has really been like stirring my heart right now. Is there one for you right now that's just been coming back to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can think of several. Um, Gosh, a new one that I love so much is Bless God on Brooks'
Yeah,
new
that's such
album.
a
I
good out,
love
such a
that
good song.
song. Um, and
Yeah,
then some songs that are like in my all time. There is no one else for me,
yeah.
none but Jesus.
That's my
Um,
all-time favorite,
oh, is it? Oh,
man.
see,
Yeah,
it's like,
the
I mean,
bridge, man, is insane. All my delight
oh
is in
yeah.
you. Yeah, I
Oh,
know.
I'm
It's
sorry, God. Yeah,
yeah,
like that song is just that'll stop me anytime it comes on. Anytime.
yeah,
Easy.
yeah. That is so good. All right, so you released your first solo album as Pat Barrett in 2018, which can you believe it? That's like 5 years ago. How have you
No,
seen worship music change in the past 5 years?
yeah, I past 5 years. So in general, I mean, over time, like it seems like different waves of music and even
Yeah,
influences, coming in and out.
yeah.
Sometimes the
Where do
way
you think we are
records.
like right now? Like where do you think we are like
I,
right now with like worship music?
you know, I think some of the best songs I've heard in years are all out right now. Just
Yeah.
I think I'm always amazed at like it feels like the quantity and
Yeah.
quality of writing has like
Yeah.
intensified.
Yeah. And
And
how is that possible?
I know, and really, and I also know that at the same time, just because people write, I write plenty of songs. I hope no one ever hears. I'm not saying anytime you write a song is good, but I do feel like in general writing, like more churches than I've ever seen are writing their own songs for their own communities,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I love that because
Yeah.
I was a worship pastor for almost 10 years, and it was just it was a value for our community to make sure that we're singing songs that were written in our
Yeah.
little local expression.
For your church.
Yeah, and I think what it does is it makes you just lean in, um, makes you lean into what you feel like God's saying in your community, for that specific time, and it also just starts to stir more creativity, which I always loved. So,
Hmm.
um, I think that's a big change. And I think it's really cool. I think it's important
Yeah.
if I think it's important whether you think you're a writer or not to write.
Yeah.
And as a worship leader, and what better way to sharpen your and participate in the formation of what God's called you to than learning how to express and say what you really feel in ways that connect with you and connect with other people. Because
Yeah.
sometimes matters of the heart are really hard to talk about. By
Hmm.
nature, it's not like words don't ever do experiences justice.
Yeah.
It's always
Yeah.
better to experience. And so, like,
Yeah.
being able to help unlock, you know, or give people permission to unlock their heart and
Yeah.
and model that. I think it's a really amazing practice and skill to engage in, whether you're putting out albums or not. It's regardless, learning how to
Yeah.
express and share the things that are really deep and hard to talk about,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
end up being really powerful for people.
Yeah. Whether you're good at it or not.
Yeah,
I love that thought, man. I really love that. Um, because I was thinking, as you were talking about it, I was thinking about, like there's prayers that you could read, through a liturgy. Like you could pull up like an old liturgy book and like read a prayer. And they're beautiful prayers that someone wrote. But like at some point, you got to like make your own prayer and you need to like pray to God like what it is on your heart and where the
yeah,
spirit is pulling you. And I see that with like songs. Like I could play a Pat Barrett song, which is a great song. Um, but at some point too, I should try singing my own song,
right,
like my own prayer.
yeah,
And man, I do love that encouragement for every worship leader because I think a lot of worship leaders are like, I can't write. That's like for other people. But I think it's something that's good practice, something to put to practice.
yeah. I agree.
Tell us, yeah, tell us about your album. So you got Shelter,
My
came
album,
out
yes,
last month.
Shelter.
Tell us about it. Like
It's out. Yeah.
what do we need to
I
know?
What do you need to know? So that song, Shelter, like the title track of it, is written
Yeah,
out of Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength.
yeah,
And anytime I go into an album, I'm not necessarily like thinking thematically and then writing towards that. I'm just writing whatever's, I mean, the same way we already talked about songwriting. You're just sitting down at a piano and sharing what you're
yeah,
going through and using music to help find communion in whatever life looks
yeah,
like.
yeah,
And these have been the songs over the last year and a half, 2 years that have, brought awareness and helped facilitate communion and worship
yeah,
in my own life and heart. And I think I loved calling it Shelter because that psalm is about life falling apart,
yeah,
and in the middle of things shaking, and even like in the psalm, it's like there's wars, there's in the middle of all that, to remember that
Yeah.
God God is our refuge, and our he's our shelter, and he's actually been one for a long time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And things like that help remind me that I'm not a part of some new thing. I'm a part of a
Yeah.
really old thing. And there's generations that have gone before me that have sung the
Yeah.
Psalms and lived, faithful lives and discipleship to Jesus. And, I don't want to just think of my life and my time and this current expression. I
Yeah.
want to remember, like, I'm a part of something that's been going on for a long time, way before I got here. It'll
Yeah.
be going on long after I'm gone.
Yeah.
And when I sing songs like that and remember not only where we've come from, but it just
Yeah.
you find this like solidarity with the communion of saints, but also like, okay, God, like I know you've been at this for a long time, and my problems and the things I'm experiencing are not a surprise to you, are new to you. Um,
Yeah.
Finding a place of worship and connection there, I think, is just good news.
Yeah. And there's something humbling about that thought. Like this has been going on for a long time, but also very comforting,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yeah. Oh
that
yeah.
it's not some new thing. It's not like some new invention.
Right.
Like God's been faithful for a long, long time. I'll tell you, my favorite song from the album is Every Good Thing.
Yes. Why that one?
I just, honestly, it just really hits me personally. I just feel like that's a song I want to sing. That everything good in my life does like come from God. And
Yeah.
that's what I want to be singing. That like makes
Yeah.
me want to worship God.
Yeah.
Um,
Me too.
I don't know. That just struck me. I actually I released an EP this past February, and one of the songs on my EP had was a song called I don't even know what it's called, but there's a lyric in it that says, um, "Man, I'm not doing
I
really
know
good at
this
remembering
feeling.
lyrics right now.
I know this
I'm
feeling, bro.
not." A father gives good gifts to his children was the
Mhm.
whole theme of like the song. A father gives good gifts, and when I heard your song, "Every Good Thing," I'm like, man, it's just so true. Like we
Yeah.
have so many reasons to worship God because of like every good thing. There's so many good things in
So
our
many.
lives, and so I love that song. Who'd you write that with?
I wrote that with Ethan Hulse and Jonathan Smith,
Yeah,
and I love
killer
that
song.
song. I love it. So it just reminds me of like the you know, I feel like Psalm 100 may be the most quoted psalm in all of Christendom on a Sunday. Enter his
Yeah,
gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. But like the doorway into the courts of praise is thankfulness.
hmm,
Like when you of all the things that to start there is so simple, and then it's like miraculously powerful when you
yeah,
are grateful and thankful for your life. Like Meg
yeah,
and I with our kids, when we sit down to whatever, like pray before bed or pray for a meal, like all of them are thank yous. That's how I taught my kids to pray.
yeah,
Thank you for this, thank you for this, thank you for this,
yeah,
thank you for this. Like,
yeah.
what a great way to enter into like a place of praise. Also,
Totally.
Jesus taught us how to pray. I'm just like, I know that when there's thankfulness and gratefulness in the mix, worship just comes
Yeah,
easier.
yeah, yeah,
um
yeah. It's definitely a good place to start.
yeah.
Well, everybody, go get listen to the music if you have not. It's on Apple Music, Spotify. We also have all the tracks at Loop Community, so make sure you go get those.
Get
Uh,
those.
Pat, if you were sitting down with like a younger, let's kind of go back to the teenage theme of like a 16-year-old kid. If you had coffee right now with a 16-year-old kid who wants to be a songwriter, worship leader, is there something you'd go back you'd like want?
to inspire into them?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, I admire any young worship leader who's like learning to lead worship with cameras I mean,
Yeah.
like I can't even imagine. That's not even like a realistic thought. When I go back, I'm like, I would have never put
No,
myself out there if it
for
was like being
sure.
broadcasted to the
Live streamed. Yeah.
yeah, like your third time ever leading worship, and now suddenly it's like,
Oh man, ends up on
yeah,
worship
that just
trails. Man, that's such a good point. That
that was
never was
never
a
a
thing when you
thing.
and I
Oh
started.
no, that was never a thing. So,
Wow.
anyways, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But I think what
Wow.
I would tell, there's a few things. Let it be a real offering to God, your worship. Like you don't, if it's an offering, it doesn't need to do anything for you. It doesn't
Mm,
mean anything for your career. It doesn't mean anything for your like dreams and aspirations for your vocational, professional life. It's about communion and gratefulness to God.
mm. Yeah.
And you cultivate that away from people. And so I would encourage every single worship leader the same thing I encourage myself all the time, which is when you pray, don't stand on a stage with the lights on, being simulcasted to everyone. That's not where we really pray.
Yeah.
You pray when no one's looking, and
Yeah.
you find communion with God when there's nothing you can gain from it
Hmm.
besides just being more in love and um, in worship and
Yeah.
connection to God. So I find I really think it's the current state of affairs is really, there's a weird catch 22 about it because you want people to experience the love of God as many people as we can, you know,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes our desire to serve God and can sometimes take the steering wheel
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
just forget like actually when the thing God cares about is what's done in secret. When no one's
Hmm.
looking, the time, the prayers, the awareness when no one else is around.
Yeah.
Um, our culture is very celebratory of Christian leaders that we look up to, and you don't have to look far to feel the disappointment that happens when our uh, our admiration of someone bleeds into like celebrityism, and then
Uh-huh.
we find the inevitable disappointment that
That
when
they're,
you're founding God and He's the highest point of attention, there's not let down there. There may be things in life that don't you know that don't shake out the way you thought they would, but the faithfulness of
yeah.
God isn't one of those. So I would
Yeah.
tell I would tell every young worship leader, stay in love with God. Like let the let 99% of your worship and connection to God happen when no one else is looking.
Hmm.
And that way when you are around people, you don't need their affirmation or their attention or their celebration of you to feel validated and used by them.
Yeah. To circle it back to songwriting, that's also another special thing about songwriting is that you don't typically write songs on stage in front of 300 people live streamed,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know?
Thank
So
God.
a thing you could do, in your prayer closet is write songs and
Yeah.
just
Well, it's about being honest when no
yeah,
one's around, and I don't know. I'm saying all that. I do have like a probably a I pray, and I'm painfully aware that I'm doing the one thing vocationally that Jesus was like, be careful.
yeah,
Don't don't practice your
yeah,
religion to be seen by other people.
hmm
Um, you know, so I just know that to be seen, it's like Jesus knew that one
yeah,
day this would continually be the most pressing issue for um, our relationship to God and community with other people is, there may come a day when you're going to want to do something for God really to be seen by other people instead of making it an offering.
hmm,
And so I just try to remind myself of that. And it's not like you're always going to get things perfect, but the awareness of that tension and
yeah,
handing that to God and carrying
yeah,
your cross daily, finding humility and obedience is consistent way to be aware of it.
yeah. That's a good word, man. So vocation wise, what do you think you would be doing if you if you were not a songwriter and not a worship leader? Like, what do you think you'd do for a job?
Bounty hunter.
That'd be fun.
It would be fun. I don't know. I think I'd. That's a great question. What I do know for sure is no matter what I do, music would always be,
Yeah,
some part of my life as a hobby that I just love.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I've always known that like music's not going anywhere.
yeah,
Maybe, the job side of it that can change, but sitting down and
yeah,
playing a song and singing a piano, like that's what's so beautiful about it.
yeah. Do you write anything that's not like worship songs?
Yeah. Yeah. I write it. I mean, I literally just write anything and everything
Anything?
I
Yeah,
feel.
yeah,
And sometimes I do also I try on albums to like include those songs or aspects of them,
yeah,
even though it can be a little confusing
yeah.
to the listener.
Yeah, is he talking
Um,
about God or his wife?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think like there's a part of for me being a songwriter that I love. Of course, I love writing congregational songs about Jesus and you know
Hmm.
incarnation and death and resurrection, and
Yeah.
of course, and then but there's so many like places in scripture where it's not just singing directly that story, it's all the implications that has on our normal everyday lives, like
Yeah.
the way it impacts me as a parent and the way we're raising our kids and hoping, the conversations we have around our dinner table, and how does that affect worry and anxiousness about tomorrow. Like Jesus talked about all every aspect of life basically, and invited us into communion with God there. And so I think there isn't a topic off limits actually.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you got to share all those songs all the time. Sometimes there's settings where
Yeah.
not the right place, not the right time. But as a songwriter, oh no, every single topic, theme, aspect of life,
Game.
as a follower of Jesus is on the table and encouraged to be engaged with.
Yeah. It's awesome, man. Well, Pat, I am thankful for all the songs you've written. Um, the song "The Way" actually like really uh, it impacted me. There was like a season in my life. There was like a 6 month period where that song was just like my anthem
Mhm.
for that whole time, and I just loved it. And it was often the song that I would grab my guitar behind me and just play it, and then put the guitar down, and I just wanted to play that song. So I appreciate just like the gift you've given so many worship leaders in churches, songs and prayers that they can sing. Thank you for that, and thanks for taking the time, just hanging out and talking. I'm glad to meet you finally.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it's great to meet you. Thanks for doing this.
yeah, man. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.